Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fully Charged Plus podcast. What's really good about this, and it's just struck me as I was getting ready to record this, is how lucky I am. I admit this, how lucky I am to talk to amazing people from all over the place, from all over the world, about the energy transition, electric vehicles, the future of energy and transport, all the topics that Fully Charged is about. And doing this podcast really gives that opportunity of finding different people. And there's loads of different things I want to do with the podcast, and it's always the same problem, is finding the time and the energy to organise everything and do everything. I would love to have a regular panel of people that every week that I joined up with, and we had a load of stories to talk through, and that's kind of a dream scenario. And it's just kind of difficult to organise that and to maintain that every week. So this is not the next best thing. This is brilliant. And this is where I just jump around anywhere and try and find people that I can talk to and ask questions about stuff that they really know about. And this week, I guess it is a bit different, because I haven't really done this before. But this week it's proper journalists who work in the same field, but have a totally different not a different outlook, a different way of communicating. So I'm really thrilled this week that we are joined by two of the lead writers on Electrek. Now, many of you will know of Electrek, I'm sure, and many of you will have seen that we often refer to stories that Electrek run. Some of you may be aware that they feature our videos. We're kind of working in partnership with them. They're such an amazing news and commentary site. And that, what I'll read from how they describe themselves. They're a news and commentary site that is tracking, analysing and breaking news on the transition from fossil fuel transport to electric transport. Electrek covers the electric vehicle movement within the wider transition into green energy and the implications of both green energy and fossil fuels have on the climate. Just kind of pretty much what Fully Charged does. So Seth, who founded Electrek, also writes a blog called 9 to 5 Mac. I think that's where I first came across him, and I heard him on various podcasts, and he's clever. He's very clever, is Seth, and he's a very nice man. And then also Fred Lambert, who is the lead writer and editor of Electrek, they're just brilliant journalists who just find these stories, have the contacts, know all this stuff. They're just clever. So that's today's show. I'm really pleased about it. Really, it was real joy talking to them. Hopefully we can do it again. I would really love to do more episodes with them. The only other couple of things I want to say before we start is the old subscribe thing. Do the old subscribe to the Fully Charged Show podcast. As you are, so many of you regular listeners are now aware, this is a rapidly growing podcast. It's very popular. We're really proud of what it's doing. It's getting a lot of people listening to it. Do tell your friends and family about the Fully Charged Show podcast. It's a great listen while you're exercising, riding your bike, driving your car, sitting in the kitchen, chopping up carrots for supper, whatever it is you do. So there's that. It's very important. We've also recently made an announcement about the Fully Charged live shows that are coming up around the world in the next 18 months or so, 2 years. Very excited about that. The world is getting back to normal. It's never going to be back to how it was, which might not be a bad thing. Let's be honest. There's that, and then what else? There's some other thing that I wanted to tell you, and I've completely. Oh yes, if you know about the subscribe. We're trying to get lots more subscribers on the regular video channel on YouTube, because it makes such a big difference to us. And so we've done some prizes, because there's got to be something in it for the viewers. It makes no difference to anyone who watches Fully Charged how many people are subscribed to it. It's a load of old nonsense. But YouTube value the number of subscribers you have very, very strongly, and it does make a difference. And if we pass 1 million subscribers, which isn't ridiculously impossible, it's quite a big challenge. We're at 761,000 at the moment. And we've had a big upsurge in it, but what the idea is, if you subscribe to Fully Charged and then you register on our website, fullycharged.show, you're in the mix to win prizes, because subscribers mean prizes. And in particular, once we've passed 1 million subscribers, we're going to be giving away 4 electric cars free for a year to lucky prize winners all over the world. So there's obviously one in the British Isles, one in Europe, one in North America, and one in the rest of the world, which probably means Asia or Australia. And we're doing this, so you get a leased car free for a year. Amazing prizes, absolutely amazing. So that's very exciting. But then one last thing before we start, let's have a lovely word from our glorious, gorgeous sponsor who make the Fully Charged Plus podcast a possibility. You get it for free, we work hard, and they pay for it. Marvellous. What better arrangement can you even dream of? My Energy is putting the I back into British innovation. My Energy is putting the I back into inventing the future. My Energy is putting the I back into inspiring a nation. Recharging the world with green, smart energy. Charge your EV with your PV and more. Visit myenergy.com and help to spark the green revolution. My Energy, driving the charge to a greener future. I'm just going to bring up all, because I'm very happy to talk about anything, but I just thought I just went on the Electrek site and immediately saw it was very easy. I went, I want that. Oh, that one. I want those.
That's what we do every week with our podcast, anyways.
I mean, in a way, that's why I wanted to start. Was to express my frustration and envy in the fact that I would love to cover every story that you do as a video, as a kind of news episode, and it's just impossible because there's so much happening in the broader field that we both cover. I mean, Electrek and Fully Charged cover all those topics, but I mean, no, we don't. Sorry, you cover all those topics, and we skim across the top because it's just impossible to produce. Unless it's a 24-hour rolling news service. We could do it, maybe.
It's getting crazy right now. Just this week, I had the ID4 VW, and tomorrow I'm going to see the Bolt EUV. And
I don't even know about that. What is that? A new Bolt?
It's a new Bolt. Wow. It's kind of like the old Bolt, a little bit too much like the old Bolt, in my opinion. But some night, there was a lot of complaints about the inside, and they fixed the inside. So,
right.
I was saying is the Bolt is a little bit of a tragedy because when it came over to Europe, it was like, hey, this is a great car for Europe, and immediately GM sold the Opel and Vauxhall brand to PSA, and then there was only a few stranded out there. Yeah. And then Renault came along with the Zoe, the updated Zoe, and it's pretty much a Bolt, like for the most part.
Right.
Filled the gap, yeah.
Yeah, and now it's the best-selling car, EV in Europe. Yeah. And GM could have had that.
Yes.
But they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I think that's certainly the topic I'd love to start talking to you on, because we just recently did the episode where we listed all the vehicles that were available around the world without really separating them down by geography. And there's a hell of a lot of, if you compare it to 10 years ago, it's mind-boggling how many there are now and what's coming in the next couple of years. But there's clearly a big difference. And we could really sense that in the comments. I mean, the ones that we're very used to is from Australia, people saying it's not fair, because that's very different in Australia. But even from Americans going, I wish we could get, there's a lot of cars that are really popular here that are selling well, that are quite affordable, that you can't get in America. I mean, the Zoe being a classic example. But
the ID3 upset a lot of people too. I think.
I don't understand that.
No, like the fact of why would it not sell in the US? But I mean, we were seeing a lot of that for a lot of European automakers where they launch new cars, and the even at first, like a good example would be the iX3 from BMW, where they're like, perfect car for the US market, and SUV. People love SUV in the US, but then they always come up with some reason in this time. It's like, our dealership didn't like the range of the car,
right?
And I mean, dealerships are not always the best people to go to if you want to have a good opinion on electric cars. I wouldn't necessarily listen to them, and BMW did in this case. But of course, you have to take it with a grain of salt. Like, obviously, I don't think it's the real reason. I think the real reason is they want to just ship it to Europe right now because you guys have a stronger regulation. It makes more sense for them. It's worth more delivering the car in Europe than it is in the US.
Yeah.
Now that might change a little bit now that that Biden has been elected and the tax credit is being extended. Though BMW didn't really have that issue because they haven't reached their threshold for the tax credit yet anyway. So.
Right. Because that was something that, now I'm trying to remember who it was that I spoke to recently, but I mean, it'll come back to me. It was to do with the impact of particularly Tesla on the American market, particularly the California market. So I can remember working in California in the early 2000s, and I was very aware in Los Angeles, very aware that all the sort of executive movie and TV people I saw or met or heard about were in big high-end BMWs, Audis, Mercedes, and if you were cool and rich and you lived in Hollywood, you had a European car. You didn't have a GM, you didn't have a Pontiac or a Ford. You had a Mercedes or a BMW. And that
around that time, maybe you had in the EV1. It was starting to.
Or the EV1, yes. But what's happened since then is the last time I was in Los Angeles a few years ago, I sat in a queue on Sunset Boulevard in a queue and a traffic jam at the red light, and pretty much every car was a Tesla. I mean, it was boring.
Oh yeah, I've stayed in LA a lot in the last few years, and every time I see like a 7 Series or a S Class, I'm like, have you got the memo? Like, you should have a Model S right now. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. And I haven't been in California since the Model 3 came out, so that must now be even more common. I mean, But I mean, what's interesting is that I think of, because I first experienced electric cars and the concept of electric cars while I was working in California, I still have a mental lock on electric cars are American. It's an American idea. This is the next generation. Which, in a sense, that is where it started. Out of Silicon Valley, not Detroit. And yet now it feels like America is lagging Europe. Whereas at the time, when Tesla first came out, it was just such an extraordinary phenomenon. That was like put America miles in the lead, and then we got little Nissan Leafs and Renault. So it's.
Well, it started in the US, the last wave, if you get Tesla behind it. But I have this book right here, which is 100-year-old book.
Wow.
That is called the Electric Vehicle Handbook. And I mean, that's about the early electric vehicles in the US 100 years ago.
But it was published 100 years ago, the book.
Wow. This very book is that's not working.
It keeps disappearing. Yes. It's like a magic book. Keep it there.
Yeah.
Wow. How amazing.
This version is 100 years old. It was published, I think, in 1913, the first edition.
Right.
And in there, you have a bunch of examples of actual electric vehicles that were sold back then. Yeah. Electric trucks, really, they were all early version of an electric pickups, which we still don't have right now, and we need badly in the US because of the mix of pickup trucks in the passenger vehicle market. And it compares the ownership cost of an electric vehicle to a one-horse wagon and everything in there.
Amazing.
And of course, then the electric starter happened, and that pushed gasoline vehicle, unfortunately, to the top. But if we had stuck with that technology 100 years ago, can you imagine? Like, we wouldn't have needed Tesla. It would just kept going, and batteries would have improved.
No, Elon Musk would be living on Mars by now. He's just being held up by having to run car factories. Because I mean, the book I've got. Now, hang on, let me get that. Now we're doing books.
We're comparing books now.
Is it there? Oh, damn. No, because I'm rereading it. Damn. I think it's Conrad Black. I think his name is.
Oh, that rings a bell, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Early electric vehicles were sold to women mostly because the crank starter was something
that was that whole story. So I didn't really know that.
The electric starter was part of electric vehicles on the mice.
Charles F. Kettering. That's what I remember. There it is. Yes. Oh no, Edwin Black. I found it. So it's called Internal Combustion: How Corporations and Governments Addicted the World to Oil and Derailed the Alternatives, from 2008. But that's a fascinating book because a lot of the history from the book you have is, I mean, he probably used that as research, I would imagine, to it, because that's where all those stories I found out about. Even Henry Ford making electric Model Ts. I never knew they made any. They actually had a production line producing electric Model Ts because they thought Henry Ford thought that was going to be it. It was really the starter motor absolutely changed it. You're right.
I mean, the efficiency was always better. There was no doubt. I mean, the internal combustion engine got a lot better for over a period of time. Like it evolved a lot. While of course electric vehicles were already so much better that people didn't even think about efficiency that much back then on it. Internal combustion engine had a lot of room to grow there. And that got better. And of course, then we talked about it, but the electric starter made it a lot more convenient.
Yeah.
And that was the nail in the coffin for EVs for literally
basically 100 years. Yeah.
100 years for it to really take off. But I mean, we've seen things in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, our publication is called Electrek, and we found, and that, I mean, Seth told me it's a coincidence. It's a pretty big coincidence, but I'm going to believe him on that. But he named the publication Electrek. And then later found out that there was an electric vehicle. Was it the 70s or 80s?
Late 70s.
Oh, really?
Called the Electrek.
Oh, you're kidding.
Built in Colorado.
Wow.
The
and was it like
car you ever seen?
Was it like an off-road vehicle, or was it just an ugly car?
No, it kind of looked like a Gremlin, like an AMC Gremlin, which is...
Oh, I know. Yes.
One of the worst looking cars you've ever seen.
I mean, it did seem to be absolutely... It must have been the people who did it, but the experimental electric cars in the UK around that time are just unimaginably weird. Look like lumps of cheese, or they just why do you make it like that? And then you realize that's 100% engineers.
Right.
Engineers go, well, a human being sits here in the box, and the front it goes that way, so we'll make it aerodynamic by making it sloped. I mean, it has no styling or anything. It's just
the Electrek was a bit like that too, in terms of the aerodynamics. I mean, we complained early on in the revival of the electric vehicle with the Leaf and the i3 that the automakers were focusing on weird designs that people were not used to. But now, as we talked about that, we're realizing that actually dates back a little while for electric vehicles with the experimental cars that you're referencing here.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the other equally important topic, which I'm really, I've always loved the fact that you cover that as well, is the related issues to it. I mean, it's not just because there's now dozens of channels and websites and news feeds about electric cars very specifically, whereas I think when I first came across you and when we first started, there wasn't really anything. You were one of the first. I don't, because what should I call you? What should I call Electrek? Because I don't want to call it a blog, because it's like a magazine. It's like a really good magazine without paper.
Whatever you'd like. It's different things to different people, I guess.
Yes, I know. But
we don't mind blog. Blog is not.
Yeah, I suppose blog is. I don't know. It just feels a bit 90s now, doesn't it? But anyway, the fact that you cover the energy market and the renewable energy and the way things interact and not just cars, trucks, buses, bikes, delivery vans, all that stuff is, I think really. It's a much bigger picture than cars. And that's what I'm always struggling, because, I'll spend weeks researching and then long time filming and really making sure we can cover this topic. And some people watch it. It's good. It's not that it doesn't get anywhere. And then we do quite a thrown together episode about a car, and 250,000 people watch it on the first day. And you go, that is, but I'm still glad that 250,000 people watch it on the first day. We've just had one about the Ioniq 5 has done very well.
That is a pretty remarkable car.
But it's a great car. I mean, because I went to a presentation, like an online presentation. There was only 2 journalists on it. So it was really sort of 1-to-1-ish. I just thought it was an amazing step forward.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually contemplating a top 10 things I love about this thing, because it's just got a lot of the things that we've been talking about, like the power to the grid, or power to, what do they call it?
They call it vehicle,
load.
Vehicle to load. Yeah.
Which at 3.6 or 3.5 kilowatts, that's enough to kind of power a house in a blackout. If you
yes, in a blackout you could light the house from it. Yeah.
Right, which is kind of a big
Yeah.
Big deal. People pay $5,000, $10,000 for a backup generator,
Yeah.
and this thing has it built in. And it's also got solar panels, which we all know that aren't going to power the car.
No.
But it's a few miles.
Well, if
with
it adds,
Empire Drain.
yeah, if you're parking your car out in the street and you live in you've got some sunshine occasionally, and you add 500 miles a year, it's pathetic. It's nothing. And then you go, well, it is 500 miles a year. I mean, some of the solar cars in Europe, which they're now testing on the road. So there's Sono Motors Scion is covered in solar panels. Well, they're adding 4,000 kilometers of range a year, doing nothing, just parking the car, just leaving it out. And if it's in the sun, it adds some juice to it. It's never going to, you're never going to rely on it totally. But the fact that you can get some is actually makes a difference.
Yeah, we like the Lightyear as well. That's a really cool car, and especially where it came from. Not cheap.
Not cheap. No, I'm sure it won't be cheap.
But it came from that solar race that they do in Australia, which is pretty neat.
No, I mean, that team, bizarrely, I interviewed some of the people who've now gone on to form that company. I interviewed them for the BBC years ago when they were all students. And it's one of those shocking things where you meet a group of people in the Netherlands who all speak perfect English, of course. It's really annoying, better than we can speak it. But they were kind of kids. And I was an old grey-haired man. And then I go back to Eindhoven where they've set up this company, and I see these people who have now matured a little bit. And then I'm a knackered, balding, grey-haired old man. But they are so bright, and just think, God, I'm so exciting that they're working on that and getting some traction.
Yeah, that was interesting because the project, and like we know that the solar arrays, the cars are so efficient, and they don't comply to all the regulation that you need to in terms of safety and everything for a road vehicle. But they're is it the Stella that was their car or something? I think it was. I have Stella in mind, but their vehicle already back then during the student competition was already closer to a passenger cars in terms of like a convenience and everything. Like there was room inside the car. It wasn't just like a race vehicle. Basically, you have like your helmet getting out of the car for aerodynamic instead of having a windshield. They didn't have that. They were already pretty like
four-seater car.
Yeah, but closer than anybody else. Yeah. So it makes sense to try, even if it doesn't work. Like it's not guaranteed it's going to work at this point, but it was worth the try to see can you actually make a solar car. Because in terms of aerodynamics and everything, they are pushing more towards that. And I think the Sono it's more like they're more aiming on make this car as small as possible in terms of efficiency, and then we can get some solar range. But that's a contradiction too, because you want to make the car small for weight reason and efficiency, but at the same time you reduce your surface to get some solar cells embedded in the car. So I'm curious to see if those things are gonna pan out and work in terms of like solar cars. But I mean, can you even advertise them as solar cars if your 90% of your range is really going to come from a battery pack being recharged on the grid? So I don't know, but I like the idea of starting to introducing it in cars like the Ioniq 5, and I know like Tesla is talking about it for the Cybertruck, for example.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. All right.
Yeah, for the cover of the bed, and if anything, it's going to remove any concerns for a vampire drain of just leaving your car out on charge, and at the very least, you won't lose range when you're not park your car. Because I mean, right now, especially in the weather we have here in Quebec, if I leave my car unplugged outside, it's gonna lose a few miles every day. Like, there's nothing around it.
Yeah. Let's quickly. Can we quickly? Because I've just been writing about this. I'm going to do an episode about it. But the Texas grid blackouts. Because living in Quebec, I'm assuming you know about cold weather. And you have what we could classify as resilience in terms of your infrastructure, because it's a regular thing. And clearly, I mean, it kind of feels, I'm more aware of it this year because I was in Texas just over a year ago, and it was kind of warm. It wasn't cold, and I was walking around in shirt sleeves because it was not bitterly cold. But having just the first thing I heard about this was all the wind turbines in Texas have frozen, and that's what's caused these power outages. Mm-hmm. And that was what got in the news. And I just think that is such a classic moment in our transitional history that happened then. And that was the story that got through. And this was, I don't follow Texas. I don't have a Texas news feed. That came through our radio news here,
Yeah.
and it was then modified. It was going, oh, it actually wasn't the wind turbines. It was.
Well,
and then
that's good that you guys in the UK, your news outlets actually corrected that statement.
It was the BBC finally went, oh, hang on a minute, let's just actually look at it, because it was it's now turns out it's 98% of the power that failed was gas and coal.
Yeah, so there was a 25%
wind.
25% drop from thermal power plants, and a 2% drop, I think, from from wind turbines. So obviously the thermal plants, which are of course coal.
And we know wind turbines work. There's wind turbines in Antarctica. There's all over Norway.
Yeah, all over northern Norway. I see it right in the far Arctic Circle, northern Sweden. When I filmed a rallying car rallies up there, I was standing at the base of a massive wind turbine when we were filming. And that was turning, and it was minus 35, which is really extremely unpleasant.
So you can make them cold resistant, of course.
Yeah,
you cannot really blame Texas for not using those, because at the same time, this was literally like 1 in 100 years kind of storm and weather pattern that happened. Though it could have happened more with the climate change now. So we don't know exactly. But yeah, I mean, they're gonna have to take a few lessons out of what happened there in terms of, like, if you compare it with Quebec. I mean, obviously we're used to cold, so our infrastructure is built around it. But also it's completely different in terms of the way we regulate our grid, because here, I mean, it's extreme, of course. In Quebec, our grid is owned by the government, by the people. So, but in Texas, it's completely deregulated and a free for all kind of thing. But they're gonna have some hard lessons to learn from that.
Yeah. But it is. I mean, it was even the governor said it was the wind turbines, and it's just. That is. I think it's probably, as an outsider, because this is the thing that confuses me. All the people I met in Texas were really lovely, committed to electric vehicles, were excited about renewable energy and the energy trend. That's all they talked about. So that's how I think Texans are.
Yeah, the parking lot at the fully charged event. We went last year. Unfortunately, we arrived after you left. But
it's heartbreaking now, the whole thing. But yes,
but anyway. It was funny because you're driving on the streets in Texas and it's pickup truck, whatever, and then you pull into the fully charged event and it's Tesla, Bolt. Like you pulled in every single EV from like 1,000 miles around.
Right. It's extraordinary, wasn't it? Amazing. No, we're about to announce fully charged live Austin, Texas 2, which will be, I'm not going to say now in case this goes out. Next year. Yeah. But I mean,
let's say that's a safer bet.
Everything is still next year.
Technically, you could do it this year in Texas. They don't care.
No.
They'll let you do it.
I think the first event we're planning on going to right now is the IAA, and the old Frankfurt Motor Show is now in Munich, and that's in September or October.
Oh, is it? Oh, that's encouraging. Oh, that is very encouraging. Okay,
that's kind of our first real thing. How did you decide on Texas? I'm curious of the places in the U.S.
It was very much Dan who went who went all over the states looking at places. Obviously, lots in California. Potentially there were, and it kind of made absolute sense to do it in California. Which is what I was saying. And when he said, "I'm thinking, what about if we do it in Austin, Texas?" And I had been to Texas, not Austin. I can't even remember where, but definitely not an urban center. Rural Texas, filming for the show I used to make in America for Junkyard Wars. And so my memory of Texas, which was, we had a wonderful time, wasn't bad, but I just thought, no one's going to want an electric vehicle or anything remotely like it in Texas until he said Austin. And then we went to see it, and it's like, oh my God, this is an amazing city, and what they're doing in Austin. So Austin as a city and their power grid, I don't know how badly that fell over, but I mean, they're aiming to be 100% renewable, and they've got a very different attitude to it, to the state in general.
Yeah, and they've got a new company rolling into town now.
Yes,
Tesla.
Yes. Which I would love to be able to say we knew that, which is why we chose Austin, but we definitely didn't.
They're actually quite close to the center where you're.
It's quite near, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's so strange. I mean, presumably they must have known, but when we were there at that time, they would have had, the forward planning of that would have.
Oh yeah.
Well, we were first to report actually that they chose Austin. It created kind of some issues actually that
Right.
report. I mean, because we thought that the deal was done when we reported it.
Wait, no.
Right.
But it wasn't made official,
Right.
And Tesla got mad and they leaked that what was it, Tulsa,
Oklahoma
was still in the running, which
Right.
it wasn't really, and that created a lot of people were mad about with
And
us
they
in
blamed
Tulsa.
you.
Yeah, because they were like, "Hey, what are you talking about? We're still in the running." I'm like, what I'm hearing, you guys are not. I'm sorry, I have nothing against Tulsa, but you guys are not in the running. So that was in May of last year that the deal was like unofficially done. Like they already they told the people in the construction team and everything, you guys are going to Austin, figure out find some contractors and everything to build that Austin plant. That was in May, but I think that the deal wasn't official until July.
Right. I'm very pleased you get in trouble. I mean, I'm not, because I don't want you to get in trouble, but it's encouraging because the amount of times I've sort of gone, yeah, I get it. We won't release anything before the embargo ends, and then go, oh, that's exciting. Oh no, it's an embargo. we actually do. I didn't do it for once, but it accidentally happened with the Ioniq 5. A member of staff who will remain unnamed accidentally.
I mean, it's hard not to
image.
get excited for the Ioniq 5, to be honest.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
If you knew about it beforehand, I would. If I knew about it beforehand, I would have a hard time to keep it to myself.
Because that's that's an interesting thing that is slightly off the topic of electric vehicles and renewable energy. But I'm intrigued to know, do you, if you get a scoop like that, and you are the first people to release that news, do you see a spike in views and clicks and all that? Does it does benefit you?
Yeah, it sure does. But I mean, we're not talking about any. We of course we respect any embargo that we get and anything like that. But we're more talking about if we get like outside sources, not official sources, and then we can confirm the information with the second one or whatever. It does help. I mean, for a long time, Electrek has been known for breaking news, especially when it comes to Tesla. Yeah, I mean. We a lot of people see us more of like a Tesla news outlet, but we have to understand that if you look at our content, we are more like a North American based publication. We cover we do like to dabble in Europe, and that's why the deal with Fully Charged was so beneficial to us, because you guys are really deep into all the European vehicles, so we can share some content on that front. But I mean, we were mostly North American based, and Tesla in the US, 80% of cars, all electric cars last year were Tesla vehicles. So
sorry, say again, what was the percentage? 80%?
Well, 79, I think, officially, but yeah.
Wow. Of 79% of all new electric car sales in North America were
US.
In the US, okay.
Because I'm Canadian, so we do cover a lot of the Canadian market too. And Canadian market is a little bit different because we do have some very strong incentive here. We have a federal one that's $5,000, and we have some provinces that have a specific one. Here we have an $8,000 in Quebec. So add the two, that's $13,000. It's a lot of money, but we do have a price restriction in terms of the limit of the pricing. So that affects Tesla. So it makes some other vehicle that are cheaper a little bit more popular. Right. But yeah, in the US only, though, Tesla's.
But that is incredible, isn't it? That is almost a monopoly. It's almost like Google with.
It's getting pretty close.
Web search. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to consider the fact too that Tesla. I mean, I don't know if you're aware of the tax credit in the US, but there's a threshold at 200,000 vehicles, and then the buyers of that particular manufacturer lose access to that tax credit, which is $75 or $100 for the money. And Tesla was the first to hit that, of course, because they were first to market with high volume vehicles. Yeah. So last year, no tax credit whatsoever on Tesla vehicles, tax credit on everything else except GM cars. Right. And still 80% of the market, which is just crazy.
Which means we don't cover Tesla enough. Because 80% of our coverage, we're definitely below 80% Tesla. Yeah, you are. So we should be covering more Tesla.
I mean, but the simple fact of the matter is there's just a staggering amount of news relating to what they're doing. I mean, it's not like you're sitting there drumming your fingers, waiting for Tesla to do something.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's so many updates and new stuff they're doing. I mean, then the newly refreshed Model S. I mean, I love the fact that you see the pictures with the steering yoke, and immediately my Twitter stream. It's about. I love how people react to things like that. Oh my God, I would never have that. That's insane. It's dangerous. It could kill people. And then you see a picture of an actual model on the road, and it has got a round steering wheel, of course.
Yeah, but that's so confusing too, because but Tesla is like that. If you go on the website right now and you try to order a Model S, it only shows you the picture with the yoke steering wheel,
Right.
and it doesn't show anything else or anything like that. So it's quite confusing. But yeah, I mean, you brought a good point with the updates. I mean, Electrek started with Seth, his main website was 9to5 Mac, which focused on Apple products, and a lot of the coverage with Apple was always people were most interested in. They already have the device. Of course, the new device is always a big subject, but once you already have the device, you want to know what's coming next in terms of software update and everything.
Yeah.
So we took this similar approach when covering Tesla with Electrek, where the new software updates are always a big interest for the community of owners. And once that grows, like a lot of people are like, well, what's coming next for my car? And of course, with all the different hardware limitation now, like not everyone is getting the same software updates. Like the best example with the holiday update with the boombox mode that you can make sounds outside of your car instead of inside. That only works for the people that have the pedestrian speakers, which happened, I think, in late 2019. So people won't follow all that stuff. That's a big part of our coverage. People want to know about that.
Yeah. Because do you know the figure of how many Teslas are on the roads in the United States? I mean, I don't know what they've got up to now. I've lost
Not on
track
top of my head, but it's in the six figures for sure.
Right.
Probably low six figures, I would bet.
Right. Yeah. Just because I mean, actually, in terms of a company like Toyota, it's still a small amount of vehicles, but the actual I've heard this discussed in various places, but if you could do a graph that shows the number of vehicles and then the number of feet of coverage of the two, there would be a great discrepancy. Tesla gets a huge amount of attention and has a zero marketing budget. Apparently,
they don't even have PR right now.
No.
They dissolved their PR department, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, they figure they couldn't. But first of all, they always have a very small PR team compared to other automakers, especially when you compare to the coverage they're getting. So they couldn't handle it anyway. So they figured, all right, let's let people do what they
Elon's Twitter account is PR.
Yeah.
Yes, it is, isn't it? That's it. That's it, really. But then, Seth, it is an interesting transition. I mean, it makes total sense to me. 9to5 Mac, because I was, an avid Mac user. I think I'm embarrassed to say, I'm an avid Mac user. And now I've got a Tesla. It's just, I'm too much of a cliche. But we've actually both been on another podcast, not at the same time, which is Mac Break Weekly with Leo Laporte. So you've done it. I've heard you on it quite a few times. And you've been on Twit probably as well, haven't you? You've done quite a few things. But it was absolutely, I just want to give a heads up to Leo because I met him. So we're pretty close in age. We're almost identical in age. And in a way, similar background, he did a lot of broadcast TV for many years, and then it all went to poo, and then he did his own stuff, and that was kind of that's a quick précis of my career. Except I still occasionally do a bit of old TV, but he was absolutely inspirational for me to do Carpool, which is the first online series I did, and then Fully Charged. It was his encouragement, and he was such a generous guy. I went up to see him in Petaluma and spent the day with him, and my son met his son and all that stuff. It was really, we had a great time with him. He's an extraordinary man, still going, still churning out strong every week. Yeah. No, that's amazing. But then, do you still do 9to5 Mac now? Are you still involved in that, or is Electrek?
Yeah. I bop in the room. I'm mostly on Electrek, I would say probably 50% of my time, but we've got the other sites. We also have a drone site, we're working on a fitness Peloton site. We've got tons of stuff going on back there.
Great stuff. Because we're actually, you might know about this. I can't remember what it's called and it will take me too long to find it. We're actually reviewing, I'm not because we need someone fit to do it, but Helen Chesky is reviewing a static bike that generates power. which is kind of obvious, really. And if you have one, you can charge your phone with it probably. But what it is, it's meant for gyms. So if you have 40 in a row and you're doing a spin class, it actually generates you could charge a car off it.
But it is disappointing, like knowing how much energy you can produce. Like, I can turn out 250 watts, which is almost nothing, like it's like a small solar panel.
Yeah. And Lance Armstrong at his peak, drugged up to his eyeballs, allegedly, he would only produce have produced probably 400 kilowatts. It's like nothing. It wouldn't be like 1 megawatt. That's.
But I always figured that they should still make that for as a consumer product, because even though, like you said, it can be disappointing, but just the idea that you're not just trying to work out to get better cardio or healthier, whatever your goal is. You're also like producing something tangible, even though it's not much. But if it can just like charge, like, for a gym, I think it makes more sense. But for a consumer product, if it was like a small battery pack linked to it that you can charge, and then you can plug something into that, I think that would sell. That would.
You can mine some Bitcoin.
Yes, you can cycle to mine Bitcoin. But there was a TV show here years ago, long before electric cars and renewable energy. It was nothing to do with me, but it was the channel I used to work with. They did an experiment where they had a suburban house, just a standalone 3-bedroom house with a family living in it, and they reconfigured the wiring so that it was powered by people cycling on static bikes next to it. But it wasn't 2 or 3, it was like 180. No. So they come back home and turn their lights on, and 3 people would start pedaling, and then someone would turn the TV on, 7 people, and then someone would put on the dishwasher. Come on, quick! And they're all like, it was, and it really, I would wish we could afford to do that on Fully Charged, because it just showed you how you consume stuff and how it's so automatic and no one ever thinks about it. And I think that is, for me, the key kind of a change with electric vehicles is I never thought about where gas came from, where petrol, as we call it. And I'd driven for, I don't want to say 40 years, in gas cars. I never thought about it. I complained about it costing a lot of money, but I didn't think about it. And then as soon as I got an electric car, I went, where does electricity come from?
That's the best thing about electric vehicles. Is like, even though it doesn't give you many options, it gives you options for how to power your car.
Yeah, absolutely.
With internal combustion engine, you have like, if it takes petrol, it takes petrol. If it takes diesel, it takes diesel. That's it. Yeah. With an electric car, you have your grid. You're limited with your grid. But if you can have the option to have solar panels on your house, then you just had it an option. You can power your car with that. Yeah. Some electric utilities will give you options, like you can get credit for solar power at the utility level, so you get some options with that. So if you go to charge somewhere else, maybe the charger have a solar carport, and that's an option there too. So it's limited option, but it gives you option which you don't have with the gasoline car. So that I think was the biggest, most least understood difference with an electric car.
Yes. Well, and also it is changing, isn't it? I've just learned this the other day from someone who works at the National Grid. I didn't even know how that big a change that was. In 2010, around 40% of our electricity in the UK came from coal, and now it's less than 1%. And generally speaking, it's nothing. Most and within a year or so, there will be no more coal plants. They just won't exist. They'll close.
That's fantastic.
But that is incredible, and it's sort of happened under the radar in a sense. It's just happened. And it's
what
wind.
Are the bigger sources in the UK now?
Well, it's wind and gas. So generally, like today, I did check this morning because it has been very windy here. Wind's been way up in the top. So it was like 35-40% of our power was from offshore. This is offshore wind. It's just huge offshore wind farms. Yeah. And today it's much less, but there's a bit more solar because it's actually been sunny, which is always a shock in this country. Oh my God, what is that? It's bright.
And the solar in the UK, is it residential or the electric utilities?
There is some. We've got quite a lot of utility solar in the area of the country I live in. So the south and southwest has the most solar in it. Okay, 2 things up. Well, I have your stories that you had. I do want to, because that one I hadn't heard of at all. Tesla's new world's largest battery is showing progress in drone flyover. I love that. But I don't know any. Do you know much about that? Because I don't know where that is. You said it's in Moss. I don't know where Moss Landing is. So
Moss Landing is south of San Francisco in California.
Okay, it's in California. Okay,
it's actually a very beautiful site of there's a giant power plant there, and now they are using it for a site of what could become the largest battery system in the world. Really,
right?
I mean, Tesla made a ton of headlines a few years ago with the big battery in Australia.
Yeah.
But this dwarfs it in terms of capacity, and it uses
I'm just because I just seen the picture, so now I've just read it. So up to 1.1 gigawatt hours. Yes, that's big.
And that's all the mega packs, of course, that Tesla's latest stationary storage, the utility scale energy storage system.
Yeah.
So it's quite significant, really, in terms of California has been pushing hard to add those capacity just to straighten the grid, especially with what happened in the last few wildfire seasons.
Yes.
What Texas is experiencing, well, not anymore, but like the last few weeks, the rolling blackouts. They had to do that, and especially in Northern California, because the wildfire were either putting a lot of pressure on the grid, or they were literally knocking down the infrastructure, and a lot of people were very upset about because a lot of people that they weren't really in the danger area for the wildfire were still affected by the rolling blackouts, and we think that energy storage is going to be a big part of strengthening the grid and that's the biggest project to show how that could happen. And the mega pack is really emerging from Tesla as like the big product for stationary storage. That's the new gold standard, if you will.
Right. Because that's like a container-sized battery box because I actually was, when I was doing another thing for the BBC in California, we went to the installation of that was in just north of Los Angeles. Can't quite remember where, but it was at a big substation, and they had jet turbines for peak power, producing. But they were putting in the first sort of Tesla grid batteries there, and they were arriving on trucks as we were there, and they were actually wiring them up. So but that was 2 megawatt hours or something. I mean, it wasn't which seemed huge then, but the fact that they're now talking about gigawatt hours is just extraordinary.
The scale is changing fast.
But then now is it an interesting sort of across the board story, which we've heard strangely from people who work. A friend of mine works in electronics in general, not in electric cars in particular, but the worldwide chip shortage, and it was one of those sort of extremely technical things that as he was explaining it to me, I was sort of understanding, but 3 minutes later, if you'd asked me to explain it, I wouldn't have been able to, other than I know there's a shortage. But have you covered that at all? Is that a story you're familiar with?
Well, just this morning we did, because I mean, it's starting. Well, we did a few weeks ago as a general kind of warning that it could affect electric vehicles in the short term, because we've heard a few lines shut down, not specifically electric vehicle production lines, but I mean, everyone like Ford, Nissan, GM have all announced either they halted production or they decelerated production of some lines because they just didn't have the chips to make the cars. But we reported this morning as Tesla, they didn't confirm it, of course, because they don't confirm anything now.
Yeah.
But they did shut down Model 3 production line in Fremont.
Wow. Okay.
For 2 weeks. And we, of course, because they don't say anything, we cannot confirm that it's due to the shortage of microchips. But the timing is extremely likely that's the case, but it's not. I mean, technically, it is the shortage of microchip, but it actually links back probably to what's happening in Texas, because, of course, Tesla's main computer in the Model 3 or any of their cars right now is the full self-driving computer, also known as the hardware 3.0. And that use a chip designed by Tesla in-house, but produced by Samsung. And Samsung, of course, has a big factory in Austin that lost power last week. And it's likely that the loss of powers has affected Tesla's inventory of that chip. And now they could be looking at, all right, we have to change our production capacity to match the current inventory of that chip until we can replenish the inventory and have full production. And it would make sense to shut down the Model 3 line. Model Y, of course, is what Tesla is selling most right now. So yeah, we again, that's the chip reason is speculation, but it's speculation based on some good reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also kind of interesting to see how fast, the chips are going to Tesla. This happened last week, and Tesla's shutting down this week. So they don't have like a lot of inventory on hand. It's just come in from Texas in trucks, and as soon as that stops, they're in trouble.
Yeah.
So
and I think that's across the board with the automotive manufacturing. It's that kind of last minute thing.
Just in time.
Just in time. Because when I've seen that at the Renault factory outside Paris and Wolfsburg, the Volkswagen factory, that you actually see it in action. Because they actually, particularly Volkswagen, they showed us the delivery docks, and there's a truck reversing in, and they roll up the back, and then they push out these big trolleys with crates on them, which are kind of windscreen wipers. Something as mundane as that, or it could be a tiny little angle bracket that holds the wire in that goes to the headlight, or whatever it is. Tiny things, not necessarily back axles or anything. And then that gets wheeled through, and we followed it through as the little tour. And then you see them unpack that on the production line, and then you see a guy going and putting that little tiny thing on. And that's literally arrived maybe half an hour before he attached it to a car. I mean, it was that close.
Yeah, I mean, there's tens of thousands, well, probably around, at least 10,000 parts in every car, and there's one missing, and the car is not getting produced. Because even if it's a windshield wiper, people want windshield wiper on their car, so they won't deliver without it. And I mean, that brings back though to the bad, like the real shortage for electric vehicles to take over is battery capacity, battery production capacity. And I mean, that shows it right there. Like, if it's something like a windshield wiper or a microchip, though microchip also have resources issues, like that's part of the bigger shortage here, that there's supply constraint at the resources, the raw resource, I mean. And same thing with battery. So that's one thing that we like to cover a lot on Electrek, is because we see battery capacity as the main bottleneck for electric vehicles. So everything that can increase that is a big deal. And we judge legacy automakers' commitment to electric vehicles by how serious they are about securing their battery cell supply. So Volkswagen is a good example. We're big on Volkswagen because of how serious they take that issue. With I mean, in Europe they have their partnership with Nordvolt, that is exciting. And of course, they're like most automakers, they just go the regular route of securing a supplier and just making a contract with a supplier. But that's obviously not enough if you are extremely bullish on electric vehicles and you want a quick ramp up. You want to have partnership to increase the production all the way to the resource, to the minerals. And Volkswagen is doing that. Tesla is, of course, the best example with that. They've been doing it for years with Panasonic and Gigafactory in Nevada. But if you want to know how serious an automaker is, look into their battery supply plan. That's
No, I mean, that was one of the earliest signs that I kind of started to take Volkswagen seriously. This is before the launch of the ID3, is when I saw how much they had invested in securing battery supply. And it was in the many billions or tens of billions of euros. I mean, it was a very serious commitment. They weren't kind of going, well, we'll buy a couple of packs and see how we get on.
I think that was over $40 billion or euros over a 10-year period. But I mean, that was just the contracts they were giving to like LG and Panasonic and CATL. And now with they have QuantumScape in the US, and I already mentioned Nordvolt in Europe. That's brand new capacity that starts from scratch, and they have joint ventures to build new factories with them. So that's a big deal. But I mean, now I'm pretty. I think we're good in terms of like new factory production. Like a lot of we call them gigafactories now because of Tesla. If they have a gigawatt hour kind of output, but we've seen hundreds of those being announced. Now I'm starting more to be concerned about the mining aspect to it, like how many people are investing in nickel and in lithium and cobalt and manganese and all that. So I'm looking more towards that, and also I want to see more investment into making that green too. Like mining operation, they do consume a lot of fossil fuels, and there's starting to be a trend toward making projects carbon neutral on that front and using using electric vehicles to mine the raw resources that will end eventually in the passenger electric vehicle and consumer products. So I see a few interesting projects, especially here in Quebec. We have a few of those, and I think it's going to be a big trend in the next few years.
Yeah. No, I actually heard a mining and engineering scientist recently talking about he gets angry at the wrong description of lithium-ion batteries. He said we should just call them nickel batteries. That's a much better description, because that's what's, it's nickel is the vast majority of the material in a lithium-ion battery, and the lithium is, I kind of knew that, it's about 2%, and cobalt is about 1%, now getting down to 1%. They're not cobalt batteries unless it's in your phone. That's the shocking thing, because I get a lot of abuse about. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but with people going, "Oh, I hope you like your cobalt that's dug up by slave children, you fascist."
Yeah. I mean,
you fascist, obviously.
We hear the lithium thing quite a bit, and it's like lithium is a lithium salts are a byproduct of desalinization.
Yeah.
So
really
like basically the ocean is full of it. Like
Yeah.
there's not going to be a lithium shortage anytime soon.
No.
Yeah, I mean, it's about mining it.
It's the mining, and it's the ethics of
Cheaply,
it. Is absolutely the ethics, and that was another thing that a mining engineer said to me. Was by 2050, he was Australian. By 2050, we've got to stop digging shit up. That's what he said, which was that notion of the circular economy and reusing those, because those materials the materials themselves don't degrade with use. We
don't burn them like gas.
No,
Right.
It's kind of
No.
Yeah, and one of the things we wanted to talk about was JB Straubel, one of the founders of Tesla. He's working with Nissan on recycling batteries.
Yeah.
Which is kind of strange. I always thought JB was like part of the ethos of Tesla, and he's gone off and he's working with QuantumScape, which is kind of a Volkswagen project on solid state, and he's working with Nissan at his Redwood battery recycling.
Oh, so when it's because I did see it was Redwood. Is that near Microsoft? Is it the same Redwood?
No, that's Redmond.
Oh, Redmond.
Yes.
Sorry. Because I went round Microsoft many years ago now. Suddenly went, it must be next door. Redwood.
It's actually in Nevada and close to the Gigafactory.
Which is weird because there's not any redwoods in Nevada.
I can't imagine. From my brief visits to Nevada, I didn't see a lot of redwood forests.
No. Yeah, but it was started in Redwood. I think that's where GB used to live, but now he lives in Nevada.
Yes.
He moved to Nevada, and they are doing everything there. Because the first deal, of course, that their company had was not with Tesla, but with the Tesla Gigafactory, but the Panasonic side of it to take all the battery scraps and recycle that. Because, of course, they are producing a lot of batteries that don't make it in the cars for whatever reason.
Right.
And now they have the same thing with Nissan. And, of course, Nissan, they're going to have a lot more batteries to recycle because they were early, of course, in electric vehicles. But also they did some things that weren't great for the longevity of the battery pack too, the Leaf with the lack of active thermal management and everything. So that's going to result in a lot of batteries to recycle, probably now and especially in the next few years. So it's exciting to see, just the way he's talking about it, JB. He's talking about what comes out of the recycling process is exactly what you would get in from the mining industry. So, but I would assume a cheaper cost because you're not going
go and get it
up there in the wild and having all the logistics of because normally those mining operations are not close to wherever you're building your electric car or the battery itself.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is kind of I think the two big hopes I have are vehicle to grid, like easy, normal, no big deal, and materials recycling. I mean, if we can do those two things, then the concept of the car becomes a lot more sustainable and useful. Because that was one of the very shocking things that shocked me. That it's bloody obvious, of course, but you never think about it. Is how long you don't use your car. In any given year, like 95% of the time you're not using it. And that is, you go, oh yeah, I bought this really, really expensive thing that costs money to maintain and keep going. And I pay tax on it and blah, blah, blah. And I don't use it. If you used your house 5% of the year, you'd be a very rich person that has lots of houses.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that are exciting for vehicle to grid with that, not just with the cars, because the cars is always the problem of convincing the owner to use the battery pack more with the
Yeah.
concerns of longevity of the battery pack and everything. But there's things like school buses, like electric
Yeah.
school buses make a ton of sense
That's
because of their use cases. They just get used twice a day for a few hours at maximum. And then all night they're gonna be you never see a school bus being used at night, so it sits somewhere all night, a lot longer than it needs to be charged.
Yeah.
So if it can be connected to the grid, of course, during the midday too, when there's no route to cover, and that helps too. So a lot of people are big right now on making electric school buses fleet have vehicle to grid capacity.
Yeah.
Even if it's not being used right now, at least in the future, it's going to be extremely valuable. It already makes sense to have a school bus because of their use cases be electric. I don't see a lot of school buses unless you have like a crazy route and very remote community or something that cannot be covered by an electric powertrain. But in most cases, I would assume that it already economically makes sense to have a school bus being electric. Then you had the vehicle to grid capacity to that and the value that adds if you have a deal with the local electric utility. And I mean, that's a no-brainer at this point.
Yeah.
There's no reason why not all school buses should be electric.
So, I mean, well, we should wind up because I could carry on chatting till for the next 5 hours. But what I want to say is, to our wonderful listeners, is if you want to find out any and more of all these stories we've been mentioning, there's 2 places you should go. Electrek and Fully Charged. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks, Seth. Thank you, Frederick. It's been really. All I pray is we can do this again because it's just really fascinating to talk to you guys. You're so.
We appreciate it.
You're so deep in the topic. It is fabulous to talk to you and really enjoy it. And I'm quite jealous of your snow. Although I have to say it's quite nice that it's not as cold.
Yeah.
Well, I really hope you enjoyed that. It was really good fun, as you can tell. We've got to do it again, haven't we? I mean, they're so brilliant. They know so much stuff. So we got through about a quarter of the stories that we wanted to cover. So, there's a lot more going on, as you know. Anyway, that's all. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, if you have been, thank you for listening.